Welcome everyone to the DAZN Soccer Show. Myself, Adi Oladipo, former Arsenal and England forward Leanne Sanderson, and making his DAZN Soccer Show debut as well, former Leeds, Sheffield United and Man City midfielder Michael Brown. All right, let's start with the Premier League. An exciting week of Premier League. Only a couple of weekends to go before the World Cup, so teams needing to get the points. There's only one place to start, isn't there? Anfield. Liverpool, what's going on? Liverpool, what is going on? Beaten by Leeds 2-1 at home. It's weird. It's a good result and then a bad result, a good result, then a bad result. I don't think it gets worse than this, to be fair, does it? Leeds coming into this game, having not won in 8. Liverpool coming into this game, having beaten Ajax 3-0. How do they lose to Leeds at home?
It's difficult, really, because obviously we spoke a lot about Jesse Marsch being under pressure, no win since August. And, I feel like after the Fulham game, Leeds, Jesse Marsch looked dejected, the players. But Somerville came on in that game as well and did a really good job. And I couldn't quite believe he'd been at the club for 2 years. He's got the number 10 shirt, has played minimal minutes and then scores the winner at Anfield. But defensively, that is, for me, the biggest problem. People can talk about Mo Salah not scoring goals, and I think being a striker, maybe I'm a little bit biased towards the centre forwards. But I think defensively, Liverpool look beaten down. Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, it was only a couple of weeks ago we were on the show talking about how great they played. And then all of a sudden, now it doesn't look good. The confidence isn't there. The feeling around Anfield just doesn't feel the same. And players like Jordan Henderson, something's changed there. I don't know what has changed, but the fans don't seem to believe in him. They've had a lot of injuries. You can't deny that. But first, I want to give Leeds a lot of credit because to go to Anfield, Jesse Marsch, we were saying before, it seemed like only a matter of time to a certain degree. At the end of the day, it's a results business, isn't it? So if you're not winning games, then people start to ask the question. And in modern day football, people are too quick now to say, well, this manager should go, that manager should go. Sometimes you need to be a bit patient. But if you're not winning, in 2 months and in 8 games, then the fans will start to get on your back. And against Fulham, in the previous game, the fans were leaving after 70 minutes. There was a lot of boos around Ellen Road, which I completely understand. But you could see how much that result meant to Jesse Marsch, couldn't you?
Yeah.
The relief on his face, the players, and it was a fantastic moment for Somerville. It was a great goal, and defensively, Liverpool looked all over the place.
Yeah, let's bring in former Leeds midfielder Michael Brown. Michael, Leanne said it's defensively where the problems are. A lot of people have spoken about Liverpool's engine room, the midfield as being the problems, up front maybe being a bit blunt without the likes of Jota and Diaz. Where do you see the problem being for Liverpool right now?
It's a difficult situation of where they're at. They're lacking in confidence and they've had such high tempo, high energy for so many seasons. They just seem to be not as sharp, whether the change around in the squad, something's just not really gelling. And at the top of the pitch, it was Nunes, Firmino, Mo Salah. They were the front three, obviously creating many chances. Meslier was excellent in goal for Leeds. But you talk about the midfield area, Thiago, how he was pulling the strings, great on the ball, technically. Obviously, as we know, fantastic. And I just thought Harvey Elliott was drifting out into wider positions, didn't really get any room. And you've got to credit Leeds on this occasion. I think they got their game plan spot on. The tempo that they pressed Liverpool, they were brave running in behind. It was Harrison, Rodrigo and Somerville at the top of the pitch. And I thought Adams was that tenacious one, Tyler Adams in that midfield role. And obviously Aronson, when he got on the ball, he made things happen. And it caused problems for Liverpool. They really, really struggled. It was really tense. I was at the game, I covered it, and Liverpool just not looking the same at this moment in time.
I think as well, Addy, the first goal just about summed it up from Rodrigo. Joe Gomez plays the ball back to Alisson.
Blind.
They're completely... But I feel like I've seen many players do that before. It was just a positional thing as well. He wasn't aware that Alisson was coming short. And those are the types of communication things that I don't think we've seen at Liverpool probably ever under Jurgen Klopp, have we? So those small things, but then you still expect Liverpool to come back. And for me, I always expect Liverpool to still, potentially make the top 4. I was still saying it to a couple of weeks ago. Now it looks a bit, shaky. But if we have a top 4 like we did last year, no one wanted that top 4 place, did they, in the end? So we'll have to wait and see. But
do you know, when you look and you say Jurgen Klopp comes out afterwards and actually says, well, at the start of the season, we're playing every 3 days. I wasn't sure about that sort of reaction. This game, I just felt like he should have said, listen, we're not firing, we're not playing well. It looked like a strange excuse.
Yeah, you don't see many managers now being honest, Mikel Arteta against PSV post-game said they were better than us. Sometimes you just want a manager to say, these are the problems and we'll make it better. But I think some people I've seen on social saying about Jurgen Klopp's job, no. I mean, this guy's come into Liverpool and absolutely worked wonders. And the fact that people are questioning Jurgen Klopp, for me, is ridiculous because Liverpool will be back. they've never really disappeared. They're just having a wobbly. This happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a wobble, isn't it? To the point where you think, okay, it's a blip. They're going to come over it. This is now more than a blip, isn't it? I mean, you lose to Forest, you lose to Leeds, Brighton put 3 past you, you lose to Man United, you lose to Arsenal. It's not great, is it? Napoli away, I remember that game. Liverpool probably only played well 3 or 4 games this season. So it's no longer a blip. And I think we're starting to see Jurgen Klopp question himself as well. He's gone away from that famous 4-3-3, which worked for him so well. He's now trying different formations, a different style of player as well. One thing I've seen, Michael, is Liverpool, again, going back to that engine room, it was big, strong midfielders, Henderson, Fabinho. He's almost tried to copy City a little bit. And now it's kind of cute players, smart players, Carvalho, Harvey Elliott, Thiago. And I wonder if he needs to kind of go back to what got him success in terms of big, burly, strong midfielders.
I think as well, they went back to front quickly. You've seen the fullbacks very, very high. So they'll be direct at times, turning teams around. Early crosses from those fullback positions. And I don't see that sort of style at this moment in time. And I think that is different to City. They had the slow build-up, obviously intricate passing, being able to be patient. Liverpool much, much quicker in attack. And whether the last few years of obviously playing at such tempo is causing them problems now. Obviously, we've seen the personnel change, and they're having a real problem with it. And I just don't see the confidence there, and as they were. But there's still some great players. I thought they were excellent against Manchester City. You've got to give them credit there. So the team can still do it. I think people now, do you know when you start to struggle, I think teams all of a sudden they'll jump on it and believe that they can go and win at Anfield. I mean, we're being critical of a team who've lost at Anfield. I mean, the record was incredible until Leeds obviously beat them at the weekend. So it's not necessarily there. It's away from home as well.
We can't not say, right, Virgil van Dijk, the first ever time
Yeah.
he's lost at Anfield.
4.5
last time
years. Yeah.
was when he played for Southampton. Like, what an unbelievable stat.
Yeah.
What are the chances? I mean, that is unbelievable, isn't it?
It is unbelievable. Liverpool kind of remind me of the schoolyard bully. They used to bully teams. And you know when you step up to a bully and they almost kind of cower back, and it's like Liverpool have now been found out a little bit, and again, Jurgen Klopp's going to need to sort of work magic to get them back sort of where they need to be, which is firing up the table. And let's talk about Chelsea. Chelsea went to Brighton, Graham Potter going back to the Amex. Before we talk about the game, from both of your perspective, Graham Potter getting booed and jeered a lot. And I'm thinking, well, one second, I thought he'd done a good job at the Amex. And I can understand Brighton fans being upset. You lose your manager, you lose a couple of your key players as well. But surely he deserves a round of applause. But he got the complete opposite and booed. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, to be honest. I think obviously football fans have a right, they pay their money, they go to the games, but Graham Potter was working miracles. And I'm surprised because a lot of Brighton fans I've spoken to, they didn't see a matter of if, it was when Graham Potter would leave. He turned down the Tottenham job. That's what everybody was talking about. And you can't behold him for taking his Chelsea job, can you?
No.
Bigger job, bigger club, you know, and it completely makes sense. So I do find it quite strange they were booing him because look at the way he left the club. And I think it was quite interesting that obviously they ended up getting beat for 1. I don't think anybody saw that coming at all, but I don't agree with the boos, if I'm honest.
Leanne's been very, very kind there. Oh, Leanne, that's not normally you. You've sort of been a bit kind on those Brighton supporters. I mean, that's ridiculous how he's getting any sort of criticism. Where he's took that football club, the start, not only like the results, the way he's done it, the style they've played, the recruitment, every level of where they've took the club, he should actually be getting the biggest round of applause you've ever seen of a manager coming back into that stadium. And people have got to remember, where they were before Graham Potter came in. And I love to defend football fans. We're all obviously say they pay the money and do everything, but on this occasion, it's ridiculous that he's got any criticism whatsoever.
We spoke about this before as well. When you look at Patrick Vieira when he went back to the Emirates, players, managers that return to their former clubs. When Frank Lampard, every time he goes to Stamford Bridge, he gets an amazing standing ovation. I know these are former players, but I agree with Michael. Graham Potter has worked wonders at Brighton, and it is a bit strange that they were booing him. But again, is it a minority? Is it the whole fan base? You can't base the whole fan base.
It sounded like the majority, if I'm honest with you.
But then there was people that were booing him. Some Brighton fans were booing him when he wasn't having a good run of games last year.
Yeah.
Some of them were booing him off the pitch.
Yeah, it's
strange.
strange.
I'm thinking, your heads need a wobble a little bit because that can't be happening. This is Brighton. And this is where I think it goes back to the fans being a little bit unrealistic at the expectations of a football club, because look at where like Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest to a certain degree. He comes in, brings them in from the Championship. They're in the relegation. Now they're in the Premier League. People are saying he should get sacked. Like, what? So I just think football fans in this day and age, they're too quick to jump on the bandwagon, and Graham Potter left the club in an amazing way. And I also feel like that's why they were able to go to Liverpool and get that result they did, because it was almost like a hangover of Graham Potter. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about his Chelsea side going there, though, and losing 4-1. Again, a shock result. No one expected it. But there has been a lot of, I think, tinkering from Graham Potter with that Chelsea side, to the point where I think people are I think even he's second-guessing his best 11. I don't think he knows his best 11 yet. I get it. They have to play Champions League football, so he might have to rest a few. But I always thought that tinkering is going to come back to bite him, and it came back to bite him, Michael, against his former club, which never looks good.
Listen, I think we've got to be cautious. A young manager who wants to be creative, he's got to work that squad out. When you've got such a fine squad of players to pick from, it's sometimes more difficult to actually find that right sort of formula, and you make changes a little bit earlier than you would. But these are the group of players who have not been getting results pre-Graham Potter. So you've got to look in the dressing room for me and say, why is that? There's certain players are underperforming. There's some great talent there, and he's got to find that sort of formula to get the right solution. And it will take time. You look at Mikel Arteta, he had to get rid of some bigger players. He had to get that formation. He was questioned for a period of time. Graham Potter's going to need time with this group to improve them. They've got some wonderful talent, but as a group of players, it's not just the manager, it's that group of players have got to perform better.
Yeah.
I think as well, when you like to Graham Potter, we talk about these young managers that have come from complete obscurity. I mean, he's worked his way into the game, coming from Scandinavia, bringing a team into their league and stuff like that from complete nowhere. But I think sometimes what I see right now with Chelsea, and I'm not a manager, and I think managing is an art, I think he's doing the most. I think he's almost trying to prove he should be there. And I don't think he needs to do that. Look at the way he got a Brighton team playing that were really individually not that great. He got the best out of them. And that, for me, is what the best managers do.
You think he's overthinking some things?
Yeah, I do. Because for me, like Havertz playing up not in the 9.
Cucurella as a left-sided defensive.
And then Loftus-Cheek, against Brentford, he was almost playing in a flat back 4 at times because Aspilicueta wasn't pushing him on. So, I think he's tinkering too much. And I agree with you, Addy. I think as soon as he figures out he's 11, but I think at this moment in time, I think he's overcoached. He's brought in Pulisic, who I like. But at the same time, it's like he hasn't really played. Where does that look? Conor Gallagher's playing. Then he's obviously came off against Brentford as well because he was ill in that game. But like, what is going on right now? So he runs unbeaten. Let's not get carried away to a certain degree. But I think he just needs to do what he's doing, put the 11 out there, do what he thinks, not just keep moving people around. Aubameyang probably would have been the number 9 had Thomas Tuchel have been there. I think Thomas Tuchel had Aubameyang for about half an hour before he got sacked. So, and I'm sure for players like Aubameyang, he signed with Chelsea under the pretenses that, we've all signed for clubs, Michael, that we think, oh, we're going to play for this manager. We know we're going to play to a certain degree. And Aubameyang, Thomas Tuchel gets sacked, changes Aubameyang completely.
Liam, why is he not playing Aubameyang? Several clubs, several different managers. Are we to blame the manager, or does Aubameyang have to look in the mirror and say, you would think with his ability, his talent, he would be selected. You look at other clubs, his players are going to play. How has he gone to where he's not a guaranteed starter? And that's something I've got to look and say, is it Aubameyang?
No, I mean, I love Aubameyang.
I know it's funny. I know you love him, but Michael's right though. You've got to look at the sort of the last 12 to 18 months of Aubameyang. You've gone from being one of the best strikers, best number 9s in world football, and you've now gone to a start where obviously Barcelona let you go. Now you're not starting for Chelsea. And it almost, I do think there's a question where Aubameyang has to ask of himself as well. Like, he 100% should be starting for Chelsea, who don't have a number 9. Chelsea is sort of mixing it around with Havertz playing up there. He's not really a number 9. Aubameyang should be starting. And if he's not starting, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I think it is. But, I think sometimes as a player, you do have to look at yourself in the mirror. But I also think Graham Potter just might not fancy him as a player.
Yeah, he didn't sign him.
He didn't sign him.
He didn't sign him. Maybe he's not starting.
Maybe that's the reality. But for me, Aubameyang should be playing because he will, if he plays, he will guarantee goals. But an unhappy Aubameyang might not be the best thing.
And this is the thing about Graham Potter. Look, fantastic young manager, but he's never had egos like this that he has to control. At Brighton, it would have been easy, right? Players not playing, probably just tells them. Here, a big player doesn't play, there's going to be a knock on the door, and that's something he's going to have to deal with. Chelsea, Arsenal next, big game for Graham Potter, Michael. Look, there'll be no pressure in him already, but you know what Chelsea's like. You can't lose back to back to back, can you? People will start to ask questions. Arsenal next at Stamford Bridge. Big game for that one, especially the way Arsenal are playing as well now.
Yeah, Arsenal flying, obviously full of confidence. And what we're saying, if Potter loses the game, is he under pressure because of this Chelsea regime is it going to that sort of level? But
You know, the thing is,
he knows
we actually don't know.
19 managers in 21
Yeah,
years.
we actually don't know what top goalie's like, do we? We don't know if he's like a Roman Abramovich. We don't know if you can lose a few games in a row. We have no idea. Like, surely he's not under pressure, but for the Chelsea fans, they're not going to want Arsenal to come to Stamford Bridge and do a number on them. It's just not how it works.
They're not going to accept it, are they? Those Chelsea supporters would want better performances, and there will be added pressure. We get that. But, you know, where is this sort of going with young managers? Arsenal, by the time there was a load of pressure on Mikel Arteta. Started the season last year poorly, then he got better. I think Graham Potter's earned that right. Take his time and people back it, and I'm hoping those Chelsea supporters are going to run with that, and especially the owners. And he's inherited that squad, which ultimately still feel that some of those players are not going to develop any better. I feel like they're going to decline in performances going forward. So that's going to take him time to put it right.
It certainly will do. Let's talk about Spurs, right? It's been a tough few weeks for Antonio Conte. You got beat by United, you got beat by Newcastle. We saw what happened in the Champions League with Sporting Lisbon. And you're 2-0 down to Bournemouth. I'm telling you now, the headlines are already being written, right? He's on his way to Juventus. He's gone, he's left. And then you come back and fight back. Look, let's give them credit for winning the game, but it still was an ugly win for Spurs. I know a win's a win, but they're not performing or playing well, Spurs.
No, they're not. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of under Jose Mourinho, you know, when the fans were kind of getting a bit carried away, but some of the fans were not happy with the style of football, but they were getting the wins.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I've said it many times before, it's a results business, isn't it? If you win games, people don't really talk about the performances, but I think Antonio Conte, let's be honest, has worked wonders at Tottenham Hotspur, getting them into the Champions League after he's been in the job for 10 months, got them in the Champions League after about 4 or 5 months. They didn't have really any right to be in the Champions League, let's be honest. With the squad they have, they didn't. And Arsenal kind of threw it away in the end. But I do think, you know, we know Antonio Conte, he doesn't stay at clubs for long.
Yeah.
And I've said this many times before that I feel like it's always about Antonio Conte. Now, if Tottenham lose, I feel like it's always, is he going to stay? Isn't he going to go? He starts saying in the last game, you know, we need to spend money. You can't make excuses all the time. You have to manage the players that you've brought in. You know, he's brought in some good signings. Kulusevski's injured right now. Bentancur, Richarlison's obviously injured. But you've got Harry Kane and Son. And my worry and concern is when they don't score and they're not playing well, what the Tottenham have to offer. You know, Sessegnon, he's doing okay at the moment, but is he really at that level to take Tottenham to that next level if Tottenham progress in the Champions League?
What's the minimum for Conte this season? What does he have to do with this group of players to be a successful season? We've seen Spurs supporters are demanding a trophy almost. What is going to be the minimum for Conte?
Well, obviously he's in the Champions League already.
It's to stay there again, isn't it?
It's to stay there. But season. I mean, people were talking about Tottenham winning the league before the season started with the players. And I think sometimes people have to have a realistic, you know, look at themselves as a fan and think, actually, should we really be winning the league?
Well, you say that.
You lose a game.
You say that, but look at Arsenal.
In the world, we win a game and we're the greatest team. Like, there needs to be a little bit more balance, I think, with fans sometimes and pundits as well. Because
but there is that, I mean, again, Arsenal, I guess the team you can look at, right, where it was almost between Tottenham and Arsenal in terms of who won the transfer window. Arsenal are flying right now. And I guess for some Spurs fans looking at their neighbours, they're probably thinking, why aren't we doing what Arsenal are doing right now? We added Richarlison, we added Jed Spence, who I think deserves some more minutes. We added Basuma. Surely we should be doing what Arsenal are doing, no?
Yeah, but I think that's always been their biggest problem to a certain degree. They compare each other to each other so long. Big rivals, we get that. But I think sometimes you have to concentrate on what you're doing. And I think that's what Mikel Arteta is doing. I think Tottenham are not playing well right now. They're not a bad team. But obviously in Europe, I do think Champions League football came very quick for them. They didn't expect to be in there. Yes, they got Conte in, you know, to balance them out. And I think they were probably planning for Champions League football potentially this season to a certain degree. Because who expected Tottenham? When Antonio Conte took over from Nuno, who expected them to make the top 4? Nobody was expecting them under Nuno to make the top 4. So I think realistically, people have to have, and that was this time last year. So we have to have a realistic expectation of where Tottenham are at. And I don't think, you know, I think some Tottenham fans maybe were thinking, oh, we'll push for the top 2. Maybe with the players you mentioned, Basuma, but he's barely played him. You know, when he first came in, he barely played him. So, and they have had injuries, but they just are not playing well. That's the reality. But Bentancur, 92nd minute, you know, gets the winner, and all will be kind of forgotten. They needed that win desperately, because if it ended in a draw against Bournemouth, you know, you can't keep questioning the manager every time there's a bad result. That for me makes me feel uncomfortable. Because
but you're going to do that though, aren't you? Especially considering, as you said as well, his reputation of leaving clubs after a year, 2 years. his contract, Michael, runs out at the end of the season. And I don't think anyone thinks he's going to be there next season, especially with what's going on in Juventus. And I guess that's the bigger problem, isn't it? If you're Daniel Levy, and I know Antonio Conte's asked for more money, do you really want to give this guy a blank check and say, okay, go and sign the players when you're not committing to the club either?
Well, I think that's going to be the point, isn't it? Where's the manager going to be? Can you sign him on a longer term deal? I think when he came in the building, the level of contract and the length of it was always questioned. And he had a wobble last season, didn't he, in an interview where he sort of went, well, can I take this club any further? And I almost thought, is this going to be the end of him? Good results towards the end. Obviously, he got into the Champions League. He's been able to sign a level of player different to before, where generally Daniel Levy's always been about value in the player going forward in the recruitment side, rather than let's sign a player now at £50 million, which is going to play in the team every single week. And that's probably the type of players they need. And Daniel Levy's always looking for the profit angle. So they've tried it, and Dembele came in, £60-odd million, didn't really sort of feature, wasn't a success. So that will worry Daniel Levy to go in for those players at that level.
Big win for Spurs, coming back from 2-0 down against Bournemouth. Up next for them, though, they welcome Liverpool to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Some really big games coming up this weekend as well. Chelsea versus Arsenal, Man United versus Villa. We get to see Unai Emery on the touchline for the first time. Can't wait to see him back in the Premier League. And really big game for Leeds United. The opportunity of back-to-back wins for the first time this season under Jesse Marsch. They take on Bournemouth at Ellen Road. As always, thanks to my guest, Leanne Sanderson, and to former Leeds and Man City midfielder Michael Brown.